What if this is just what it feels like to be alive? Have you ever stopped in the middle of an ordinary moment, maybe washing dishes or sitting in traffic or staring at a ceiling at 2 a.m, and felt something strange and difficult to name? Not sadness exactly, not fear, but something underneath both of those. A quiet sense that something about your life, about the whole arrangement of being a person in this world, is slightly off. Like a note played, just a fraction out of tune. You can hear the music, you can follow it, but something in you knows it isn't quite right, and you can't unhear it once you've noticed it. What if that feeling isn't a malfunction? What if it's actually one of the most honest things you ever feel? There's a question worth sitting with. Did the version of you that wanted things, that burned with ambition, with hope, with the sense that life owed you something magnificent, did that version arrive that way? Or were you taught to want what you want? Think about it carefully. The career you were told was success. The body you were told was acceptable. The relationships structured around templates you inherited rather than invented. What if the wanting itself was handed to you pre-assembled, and what you've spent your whole life chasing is someone else's idea of a destination? This isn't about blame. It's about something stranger and more unsettling than blame. What if the system, the whole interlocking structure of how society organizes human beings, doesn't break people through cruelty alone, but through something much quieter, through the slow, patient replacement of your original questions with its preferred answers? You stop asking what life is for and start asking how to perform it correctly. The will doesn't shatter. It just gradually forgets what it was originally reaching toward. Did you ever wonder how real and unreal everything feels at the same time? You can touch a wall and know it is solid, and yet the entire framework of meaning you've built around that wall, what it means to own a home, to be safe, to have arrived somewhere, is completely invisible, completely constructed, and yet it governs your life more absolutely than the wall itself. What if most of what we call reality is actually a very old, very elaborate agreement that nobody alive today was present to sign? What if the mind was never meant to operate the way we're currently asking it to? Consider what it means to really think, not react, not scroll, not optimize, but actually let an idea develop in the dark of your attention for long enough that it becomes something new. That kind of thinking feels increasingly rare, not because people are less intelligent, but because the environment has been redesigned in ways that make sustained, wandering, generative thought feel almost transgressive. What if depth of thought is becoming a form of resistance, simply because the world around us now profits from its absence? There's something worth wondering about here. What if the things we've built to connect us, the platforms, the feeds, the endless availability of other people's curated lives, are actually making us less capable of genuine contact? Not because the technology is evil, but because connection requires a kind of patient, uncertain, unscripted presence that the technology was never designed to accommodate. What if we've been solving for visibility when what we actually needed was to be known? And what if those two things are almost opposites? What if suffering isn't a series of separate historical accidents, but something more like a recurring pattern, a signature of some quality in human organization that keeps reasserting itself in new forms? Disease, war, poverty, the various structures through which humans have controlled and diminished other humans. What if these aren't failures of civilization, but expressions of something embedded in how civilization tends to organize itself? Not inevitable in the fatalistic sense, but persistent in a way that should trouble us more than it does. What if we keep treating the symptoms because looking at the pattern requires a kind of honesty that is genuinely painful to sustain? Did you ever wonder whether the people who seem most certain, most confident in their diagnosis of what's wrong and their prescription for fixing it, are sometimes the ones furthest from actually understanding it? What if certainty itself is a defense mechanism, a way of closing the question before it gets uncomfortable enough to be useful? The questions that matter most tend to be the ones that don't resolve cleanly. They stay open. They keep asking something back. What if consciousness, the simple, extraordinary fact of being aware, of knowing that you exist, of being able to imagine your own absence, what if that awareness carries a cost that can't be negotiated away? Every other animal, as far as we can tell, lives entirely inside the present moment. They do not lie awake imagining futures that haven't arrived, or mourning versions of the past that might have gone differently. What if the specific suffering of being human is inseparable from the specific gift of being human? And what if no philosophy, no technology, no system of belief has ever found a way around that? Only through it. What if the imagination, the ability to dream something that doesn't exist yet, to hold an absence in your mind and feel its shape, is not a luxury but the most essential thing about us? And what if we only realize that when we notice it going quiet? There's a particular silence that arrives when a person has stopped dreaming, not from peace, but from exhaustion, when the internal life has been crowded out by noise until there's simply no space left for anything to grow in. What if that silence is one of the most serious things happening in the world right now, and we're mistaking it for calm? What if the question isn't whether life has meaning, but whether we've been looking for meaning in places that were specifically designed to not contain it? What if the answer, if there is one, was never going to come from a screen, or a productivity system, or the approval of people who don't know us, but from something far slower and less measurable, from sitting still long enough that the constructed noise fades and something older, quieter and more honest gets a chance to surface? Maybe none of this has a resolution. Maybe the most truthful thing available is simply the willingness to keep the question open, to resist the comfort of premature answers, and stay in the uncertainty long enough to actually feel what it's telling you. What if that's where everything worth understanding actually lives?